Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here to tell you a bit about Gyroscope this afternoon. So we are a retinal gene therapy company, and we're taking the power of gene therapy beyond monogenic diseases and into larger indications. Our mission at Gyroscope is to preserve sight and fight the devastating impact of blindness. The company was founded back in 2016 to exploit the convergence of understanding of the complement system, genetics, and retinal disease, in particular dry age-related macular degeneration. 2.5 years later, our lead program is in clinic in a phase 1/2 trial in dry AMD. Earlier this year, we continued our journey by merging with Orbit Biomedical. Orbit Biomedical is a medical device company that has a specific device and procedure to deliver gene and cell therapy to the back of the eye. This made Gyroscope the first fully integrated retinal gene therapy company with research, clinical development, in particular AAV manufacturing capability, but also delivery capability. The company is headquartered in London, and we also have a facility just outside of Philadelphia. A few weeks ago, we announced the closure of our Series B, and that brings total committed funding to the company to just over $100 million. So at Gyroscope, our mantra is people, patients, and promise. And just zoning in for a moment on the patients, I don't need to remind this audience about geographic atrophy and the severity of disease, but just to come back to the patient perspective for a moment, this is a very debilitating and distressing disease because it removes people's ability to function independently. So it's a central visual loss, as you know, that progresses slowly but surely. Currently, there are no treatments available, and it's very debilitating because it impacts daily living, driving, reading, and of course the ability to see faces, and it's a huge unmet need. There are nearly 4 million patients in Europe and US that suffer from this condition. The lady that's on the right there is a lady called Janet Osborne. So she's the first patient that was treated in our clinical trial earlier this year in a short surgical procedure performed by Robert McLaren at the University of Oxford. And it was covered by the BBC, so if you're interested, you can Google it, and there's a news piece that you can have a look at. So our approach to dry AMD is really to look at the complement system. So the complement system, as you know, is part of the immune system. It's complex, it's multifactorial, and it's extremely powerful. And within that, there is a huge amount of evidence in the literature about the role of complement in dry AMD, and in particular the risk of severe disease. So just thinking about some of the data that's available, for example, it's known that complement factors co-locate in the drusen. This is a picture on the left here of the MAC complex in the drusen. We also know from multiple independent GWAS studies of substantial size, so the one that's pictured here in the center is a 30,000 subject study, that complement factors show up as being genetic risk factors for progression to severe disease. We also are seeing clinical data emerging now about targeting complement factors and the benefit that they can bring in terms of disease progression over time. So our goal in Gyroscope is to develop a one-time gene therapy product with the aim being to slow disease progression or ideally halt progression of disease. And we do that by using gene therapy to express a complement factor in order to rebalance the unbalanced or overactivated complement system in dry AMD. Our lead program, GT005, started its clinical trial earlier this year, and we're fortunate in that the convergence of genetics and complement in dry AMD means that we can start our development in a highly selected patient population for our first proof of concept trial. In addition, though, we believe that the mechanism that we're targeting has potential across all GA patients, so not just those within the defined subset that we're looking at. And so we plan to start a second clinical trial next year in a much broader patient population. We're also exploring other inflammatory retinal diseases behind our 2 lead programs. So our first interventional study, the FOCUS study, commenced earlier this year. It's running across 7 sites in the UK. It's a dose escalation open label study looking at safety and biological efficacy of our program. It's based or derived from a natural history trial that we're running. So we are selecting a patient population here which has a low serum concentration of the factor that we're interested in, and also has specific genetic mutations which denote these as being high-risk patients. And so it's in this patient population that we're conducting our very first study. We have a substantial natural history trial that's running behind this called the SCOPE trial. This trial is enrolling now across 36 centers across US and Europe. And this study is really important to collect data on disease progression, complement biology, and genetics. And this natural history study will then form a foundation of future studies that we have planned. So one of the things that's really important to us when we're thinking about our development of our product is the importance of delivery. And like many companies, we have chosen to target the subretinal space for the delivery of our programs. So the subretinal space, as you know, is the space in between the RPE layer and the photoreceptor cell layer, and it's directly in the center of the target cells that we want to reach. And like many companies, this has been chosen because it's an enclosed, stable space right in the center of the target cells. In contrast to other methods of delivery, for example, intravitreal, where you're delivering into the vitreous cavity, or suprachoroidal, where you're delivering into a drainage space between the choroid and the sclera. So when we look at subretinal delivery, this is a short surgical procedure. Currently it's done using a vitrectomy and then a retinotomy to hook the end of a needle under the retina in order to deliver the drug. It's associated with a level of variability, and of course vitrectomy, as you know, is associated with a risk of retinotomy and cataract. So we are actively investing in optimizing this delivery and this technology, and we have access to our own proprietary delivery system, which rather than requiring a vitrectomy and a retinotomy, uses a flexible cannula that slides in between the tissue layers around the retina and can be very accurately placed in terms of delivering the therapy to the subretinal space. So we have clinical data with this delivery system where we're able to confirm procedure-related safety. We're also using it to really focus in on consistency and precision. So consistency of location, but also volume delivered, and precision, so that in clinical trials and importantly on market, the level of variability, patient to patient, surgeon to surgeon, and site to site is minimized as much as possible. So surgeon training is a really important part of this. We have an expert surgeon training team who spent the last 20 years with surgeons. And of course, this is important to us for many reasons, scalability being just one of them in an indication the size of dry AMD. So this is technology that we plan to use for our own programs. We also work with partners, and it's currently in clinic with our partner Lineage Cell Therapeutics. So this is an important year for Gyroscope. We have our first trial ongoing. We have our large natural history study enrolling. We have additional programs planned for next year, and we're finalizing our commercial device development. Thank you very much.